Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to start in about 30 to 40 seconds. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. So welcome to our live webinar. So today's session is a really exciting overview of N2WS Backup and Recovery's newest release, and this is version 2.5, which is now officially live on the AWS Marketplace. So this happened just about 2 days ago, and so we're very excited to share these new features with you all. And so we know some of you may already be familiar with N2WS, but we wanted the goal of this webinar to bring out both existing features that you may or may not be using or know about, and also delve into our new 2.5 features that we think will bring just a tremendous value to enterprise customers. So just talking about our recent releases, the theme really has been both cost and time savings. And in 2.5, we really ramped that up and give our users even more of an opportunity to save costs. And you can see the title of this webinar is Say Goodbye to Idle AWS Server Costs. So we'll delve into how we are really trying to focus on getting rid of that cloud cost waste due to servers that are not being used, among other feature enhancements that will give you, we calculate up to 60% savings on storage costs. So that was quite exciting. Okay, so just some housekeeping items. As usual, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on demand. So if you did miss anything, or if you want to send it over to a colleague, no worries. We'll be sending it to your inbox right after the webinar. And we will have a Q&A. I'm not sure how much time we'll have, but please post your questions. Feel free to post throughout the webinar. If we can't get to it, we will definitely email you individually and make sure any of your questions are answered. And we will provide instructions on how to upgrade your server instance if you are a customer. If you are not yet a customer, you can try our fully featured solution for free for 30 days. All you have to do is click on the attachment section of this webinar. BrightTalk will also send you that link after the webinar. And in really just a few minutes, you can follow the video, which will also have, you can start backing up your AWS environment. Okay, so now, intros. So with me today is the lovely Sebastian Straub. He is one of our top sys engineers here at N2WS. He's really been here from the very beginning. He knows the product inside and out. I'm always happy to co-host with him. He's got over 20 years of experience in the enterprise security industry. He's worked for a slew of well-known companies, so please welcome him. Sebastian, say hello.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's always a pleasure being with you.
Great. And I'm Jessica. I head up our global campaigns here at N2WS and have a little over 15 years of experience in marketing and technical roles in the space. Okay, great. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with N2WS, just a very brief overview. We've been around for quite a while. Our company was founded in 2012. The big news at the beginning of the year was Veeam's acquisition of N2WS. This is a little over a year ago. And after that, we expanded quite rapidly. We have hundreds of employees, multiple satellite offices, the US, UK, Bucharest, Malaysia. Our headquarters is based in Florida, and our development center is in Israel. Our CTO and co-founder still sits there, and he heads up just a powerhouse over there, development team. And about N2WS, it is a cloud-native technology, so we are purpose-built for AWS, and really that has been our mantra from the very beginning, and we have quickly become the #1 backup solution on AWS, and it's all distributed through the marketplace as an AMI. It's super easy for our customers to have complete control of their environment within their own AWS account. So it just allows them to simply click a button and pay for our service as part of their AWS bill. Okay, so just a brief step back before we go into further details, just a really quick look at the state of the public cloud. As I'm sure you know already, the public cloud has an extremely high adoption rate. There are studies showing over 73% of data by the year 2021 will be handled in public cloud data centers. So managing this data is becoming a huge issue. It's bigger and bigger every year. AWS is, of course, the market leader. They're leading this movement. They're the oldest public cloud vendor. And for many reasons. They're the most secure cloud. They're the most experienced. They have an array of security management tools. They're the most compliant as well. So if you are an AWS, it is certainly the place to be. But, and there's always a but, however, the users on AWS, they tend to think that they are protected no matter what. And we have seen this, and this is, on our end, what we think is probably the most widespread public misconception is that you do not need backup if your data is on the cloud. And this is a message that AWS is very adamant about and is repeatedly reminding their customers because it is so crucial that their customers understand what exactly the shared responsibility is. So, Sebastian, I'm going to hand it off to you to maybe elaborate a bit on that and tell us, why that isn't the case and what customers need to understand.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the intro. So yeah, what you're seeing here on the screen, that's the AWS shared responsibility model. And this is a graphic you can literally find on the AWS website. That portion down there on the bottom, the orange portion, that's what Amazon is responsible for. They are providing the virtual infrastructure, and they also protect that infrastructure. So that's the compute resources, the storage, the networking, the availability zones, regions, all of that. And that portion up there in blue, and I always joke, that's the portion that makes you blue, is because you're still responsible for the data in the cloud. So not much has changed, even though the hardware is no longer physical hardware, it's now emulated in the cloud. You're still responsible for the data in the cloud. So this is your database, your file service, everything that you're storing in the cloud. That's not something that AWS will take care of. So obviously then the question is, why do I need to protect my AWS environment? Well, there's certain different reasons. EBS failure, just as one. Did you know that EBS has failure built in? When you take a look at the Amazon AWS website, Amazon EBS volumes are designed for an annual failure rate of between 0.1 and 0.2%. which of course makes them tremendously more reliable than legacy hard drives, but there's still failure built into that. So that means when you have 1,000 EBS volumes, you will lose 2 of them a year. And I think the biggest threat in all of this is that, guess what? You don't get to choose which 2 will fail. This could be your all-important customer database. It could be an important document repository. So data loss, that could very well spell corporate disaster of epic proportions. Then also AZ failure does happen. Regions do go down, and you need to be able to get this data back up and running in another AZ, another region, or even perhaps in another AWS account altogether. And human error. I think personally the most dreaded word in IT is oops. The accidental deletion of an instance, a database, or some important data. And I hear these horror stories all the time. A database admin worked over the weekend, pulled an all-nighter, and then accidentally deleted the database. So this does happen. So I love this slide. The promise of the cloud delivered. So everything that you thought the cloud could be, well, can be at your fingertips. It's a puzzle. So on the left side of the screen, you see what AWS provides. Obviously, they provide very powerful APIs and CLIs. EBS snapshots, very fast, very efficient. Then the regions and availability zones, very durable storage, especially when you're talking about S3, and then of course also the Lambda scripting. But it is only one piece of the puzzle. There is more to it. And that's what you see on the right side of the screen. This is what N2WS enhances. We provide you with an extremely simple and easy to learn graphical user interface. File level recovery, because disasters come in all shapes and sizes. Then disaster recovery of an entire instance in another region, in another account, very quickly, very easy to do with that graphical user interface. And of course, auditing, reporting, and alerting. So everything you do within the product is right at your fingertips to report on it in case of a security audit. And also very important, application consistent backups, because by default, snapshots that you're performing in the cloud are all crash consistent, but not really desirable for your database servers. So this is where we help you have that application consistent backup for those machines in the cloud. All right, so at this point, you're probably wondering, well, what's the solution then? Well, that's where we introduce N2WS Backup and Recovery. We automate and simplify operational run-of-the-mill backups, and more importantly, the disaster recovery and business continuity backups. We automate your backup routine with the help of down-to-the-minute schedules. This will give you the exact control over your required RPO. As a matter of fact, some of our customers actually back up in 5, 10, and 15-minute intervals, and that drastically reduces your RPO. Also, you can even fine-tune those schedules so that you aren't taking backups during non-business hours. I could take 5-minute backups during business hours and then reduce to every 6 hours later on, or even forgo the backups altogether till we start again the next morning. It's also super easy to deploy. Essentially, it's a pre-installed appliance. It gets deployed through the AWS Marketplace, and from start to finish, an install takes less than 15 minutes. We have some installation videos which show that the installation takes about 13.5 minutes. N2WS allows you to have that peace of mind that you'll be able to recover from a myriad of different disasters in moments. And I'm not exaggerating on that moments statement. Cross-account disaster recovery. Well, remember earlier when we talked about disasters of epic proportions? If you want to sleep well tonight, don't do what I'm going to tell you next. Don't Google the words code spaces. 2 words. It's a company that went out of business a few years back. They did all the right things. They performed backups, and they even created cross-region backups, but they didn't create cross-account backups. So their primary AWS account was hacked. They got a ransom note. They said they won't pay. The hacker then deleted all their mission-critical data. So Code Spaces went out of business within 24 hours. And how's that for a nightmare? So N2WS gives you the ability to create a highly secure backup vault on AWS to protect from exactly that scenario, from ransomware and malicious attacks. Well, cross-region disaster recovery, we already mentioned that as well. Remember back in the day when you created, in quotes, your offsite backups? So you created tapes, and then somebody picked up those tapes and took them to a secure location. Well, this is going to be much easier now in the AWS cloud, and we can automate this entire process. You can securely copy these backups between all of the different data centers across the world. And you can literally move mountains with mouse clicks. It takes 3 mouse clicks for me to move our corporate data backups from 1 time zone to 6 time zones away. So you're no longer limited by physical tapes or even just creating backups in a single data center. Why not make use of really the entire content of what AWS provides you with? And of course, recover a single file or volume or folder. Since we're native, we offer extremely rapid recovery of all backed up data. But as I said, disasters come in all shapes and sizes. It doesn't have to be your entire environment or your entire instance or even entire volume. And N2W gives you the best of both worlds, that file level and block level restore. So I can get as granular with my recoveries as I need to be. Application consistent backups. We already talked about that. The N2WS includes out-of-the-box support for MySQL, MongoDB, Oracle, Postgres, SQL Server, Exchange, Active Directory, SharePoint, and many, many more. N2WS also supports the VSS on Windows systems, enabling application consistent backups. Multi-tenancy support. N2WS supports multi-tenancy. You have complete control over what each user or group of users gets to see and do. And you can even figure out what every user should have access to, and you can even configure it so that users or groups wouldn't even be aware of each other. So if you want to build clear fences of separation between your resources and who's responsible for them, that's the product for you. It makes it very easy for MSPs to provide this as an additional service. And within the same enterprise, you can create portals for the different departments to have access to only their resources. So a quick glance back at the past, the new versions that came out. So I'm talking about version 2.3 and 2.4. I think one of the important things was our CloudFormation one-click template. Deployment became extremely easy. And of course, also we have the RESTful API. Integration with SAML-based IDP. So if you have Active Directory Federation services or essentially any single sign-on solution which speaks SAML, that's going to work just fine. Also, we do have probably one of the really, really great features within the product, the VPC capture and cloning. Backing up your data is extremely important. There's no two ways about it. But once you have that data and you want to perform a cross-account or cross-region disaster recovery, you'll find that just having the data in that region or in that account isn't going to be good enough because you're missing the entire backbone, the infrastructure, VPC settings, subnet settings, security groups, routing tables. So this is where N2WS Backup and Recovery allows you to capture all of this information and clone it into other regions and accounts. And of course, one of the most important cost-saving features is the backup to Amazon S3 buckets. Snapshots are great. They're very efficient, super fast, but they're kind of pricey. So do I really need to be able to recover a backup from a year ago in 30 seconds? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. So why not use the S3 archiving ability? This allows you to archive your backups for long-term retention into S3. And when you're looking at your AWS build, the storage section, that's probably mostly your backups. So N2WS and the S3 archiving can cut that number almost in half.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian. So Sebastian, he delved into, as you said, it was a glance back, and now we want to talk about the new features that are coming in. And this is where we continue to focus on cost savings. And this feature came about because it was seen in the industry, and we saw it firsthand from our customers, but there was just an enormous amount of cloud waste, whether they be due to testing environments or other non-production environments where servers were running and really not needed, and that this was really jacking up costs at month end. So, Sebastian, can you tell us a bit about this brand new feature that addresses this growing problem of cloud waste?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you, just recently I read a really interesting article on this, which predicts that corporations are wasting $14 billion a year on resources in the cloud that don't need to be running.
Right.
So I'm going to guess that in your environment, there's going to be some instances that don't need to be running all the time. So it's the same thing in my environment. I can then use the resource control feature to schedule these resources. A lot of non-essential resources are only used during a 40-hour work week and don't need to be running 24/7. So that means for the other 128 hours of the week, which is about 3/4 of the time, the resources just sit there idly, but you're still paying for them. As a matter of fact, I was just joking around with an AWS employee the other day, and I said, well, I like pies, but the oven doesn't have to be 24 hours a day on just in case I want to make a pie. So that's exactly what the resource control allows you to do. You're in complete control of when your resources are on and when they're turned off. And if you're already familiar with the product, then you know that we have the tagging system to include the resources into backups. Well, the same thing now also works for the resource control. So when I spin up an instance, I can immediately make sure through the tagging that the instance is going to be backed up, but at the same time, I can also then set the rules when that resource should be turned off. So what else is new? Well, we continually improve our product, add new feature requests, and sometimes we go and polish a feature even more. So we send our developers back to the drawing board, and they come up with some ingenious ways to save even further on the S3 archiving capability. So we were able to improve performance even further from the 40% savings that we saw with the 2.4 release to up to 60% savings. Essentially just use the same feature, but it's a lot more optimized now. A couple other features that are also very important are, well, as I mentioned, we continually improve the product. And whenever AWS brings out a new region, makes it available, then this is also going to be available in backup and recovery. So the brand new minted AWS region in Stockholm, Sweden is now also available within the product. Also, what's really important is for that cross-region disaster recovery, if you are in the GovCloud, that's fully supported. So you're no longer limited to only performing cross-account backups. You also have that option for the cross-region backups. We also expanded the range of our RESTful APIs, so everything that you can do within the product as far as the alerts and recovery targets are concerned, you can now accomplish that through the RESTful API. All right, so this brings us to demo time, my personal favorite. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I can actually show you that new feature that we have. So there we go, it's loading up right now. All right, so this is what you're seeing here. That's the new version 2.5. What you're going to find is an additional button right up here next to the S3 repositories, Resource Control. And as I already said, there are resources, I'm absolutely positive, in your environment that don't need to be running all the time. So what I did in my environment is I created a group. I called it All Non-Essential Instances. And then over here, just like you used to with the backup targets, you're going to see resource targets. So when I click on this, you can see that these are the different instances in my environment that I deem non-essential. And of course, the same thing also goes for RDS databases. This is one that I don't need to have running all the time. Then next to that, I have an on and off schedule. So in my case, I'm deciding that after business hours at 7 p.m., I want this to turn off, and early in the morning, we're going to turn these resources back on. And even on the weekend, I'm choosing to completely turn that off as well. So that has a huge impact on your AWS running costs because, as I mentioned, suddenly your instances are no longer running 24 hours a day. They're just running 8 or 9 hours a day instead of taking up all that idle running time. And of course, all of this information you're also going to find in the monitor, just like you're already used to with the backup monitor. So everything is also able to report on this and also ties into the alerting as well. Another side feature that I always like to bring up, it's kind of hidden. So, for example, you're already familiar with the clone VPC feature, which allows you to clone infrastructure from one region to another. That's what we came out with version 2.4, and it's right here, the clone VPC feature. But there's a tweak on this feature now as well. So now I also have the option to clone the information into other accounts. So I'm no longer just limited to different regions, but I can actually clone the entire information into another separate AWS account. And to take this even one step further, because it used to be a two-step process, I would clone my configuration, my infrastructure backbone into another region, and then I would perform the recovery. Now we took this one step further. So when you want to recover an instance, a resource, and you click on Instance Recovery, just as an example, you'll find an additional button right here, Clone Original VPC. So if I'm performing a recovery of my resources into another region, into another account, I don't have to make this a second step. I always have to do just click on the Clone Original VPC button, and all of the settings will be auto-filled. So it really couldn't be simpler. Instead of me having to go through different steps to perform this, all you have to do is click Clone VPC and then recover your instance with the correct infrastructure settings. So it really makes your life a lot easier. That's the time-saving feature that we're talking about as well. All right, so that's really all there is to it. It's so easy just to implement this feature with 2.5 and immediately start saving time and, of course, also money because of that resource control that you saw.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sebastian. So Sebastian, showed you all. It's super easy. This, of course, is a very just a brief overview of all the capabilities of N2WS. So we really encourage you all to have a more in-depth demo and really see all the features in action. And you can request that. We'll explain a bit later how you can do that. But right now, we want to focus on the next steps. So how to take advantage of these features. So we have a few options. So for those who aren't customers yet, we have our, as we said, fully featured, completely free 30-day trial. You can find the link to this both at our trial page, or you can click that BrightTalk attachment. And again, super easy, 14 minutes maximum to spin up the instance and start backing up. For existing customers, so we do have some features on all paid editions. We have Resource Control, Enhanced RESTful API, and the VPC Capture and Clone. That would be available on all paid editions. For our standard customers, there are certain features that are only available if you upgrade to advanced versions and above. So this would include the S3 archiving, the SAML-based identity provider integration, and as well as the cross-account disaster recovery. So you guys can upgrade. You can do that using our upgrade instructions, which we will link again. You can definitely use the patch. It's super easy. Reach out to us, of course. Speak to your account manager. They'll be happy to guide you through the process. Okay, so now is the part where we're going to... Sorry. Yes, I wanted to just pass it on to you, Sebastian, because we do have quite a few customers telling us, firsthand how they're using N2WS and how they're successfully backing up their environment. So, Sebastian, maybe you can, talk about those customers and what they're saying.
That's true. That's why I was saying this is my favorite part of our presentation because I'm actually familiar with the customers who left these reviews. These are actual reviews from the AWS Marketplace. And as we already mentioned, we are a 5-star top-rated backup solution in the AWS Marketplace. Now, this particular review here talks about that hyper-level resources. One of the words you hear quite often, especially in conjunction with the cloud, is hyper growth of data and hyper availability. And well, then the next part is the hyper-level resources. What this particular customer was referring to was, well, remember back in the day when your recovery time was an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, and you were happy? Well, now that this particular customer has their infrastructure in the cloud, they were able to make their resources available, and that's the hyper availability, because they can recover an entire instance within seconds. So that's the review that they really wanted to leave here for us, so to show how much easier N2W made their life with this. The file level restore. Well, this is one of the things that I was talking about just earlier, and I think in this particular case, the customer is a higher learning institution, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to have the ability to pull certain files out of the backup. The problem with the snapshots is that it's an all or nothing, but N2WS gave them the ability to just recover certain files and folders. And with one of the IT directors who left this review, I had a conversation. He said, well, this made my life a lot easier, because instead of sitting there for several minutes and recovering an instance and picking and choosing information, I can just pinpoint the exact information that I need. Well, in this one, N2WS is a game changer. Well, what this is referring to is it's a company which saved over $1 million in management of AWS EBS snapshots. And it's because in the past what they did is they had a lot of orphaned backups that they didn't really need anymore. But just using N2WS Backup and Recovery gave them the ability to be in complete control of how long they want to retain the backups and no longer have orphaned backups laying around, because you know how it is. Sometimes somebody creates a backup and then somebody else takes over the department, and you're looking at backups and you're wondering, well, should I really get rid of this? Well, N2WS essentially takes that guesswork out of the game. It just knows exactly what you need and for how long, and you don't even need to touch it anymore. I suspect that this particular customer will see even more savings over time, especially with our S3 archiving capability. So, a few more customer success stories. Well, I think Goodwill is a very interesting one, because Goodwill is a company which operates at such a thin margin that Goodwill can't afford any downtime. Their active point of sale system is tied to their AWS infrastructure. Cross-region, cross-account backups with an operation their size simply was very, very difficult with a solution that's not enterprise class. And while Goodwill was trialing our solution, they ran into a complete outage, and they were able to recover everything within minutes. And I believe that was probably the easiest proof of concept situation that I've ever witnessed, because they immediately hands-on saw the value in the solution for them. Also, University of Notre Dame. Notre Dame started with 25 instances in 2014, and their inventory has grown to over 800 instances today. That's that hyper growth of data we're talking about. So they estimated at the time that they would need thousands of man-hours to create their own scripted solutions, and legacy non-native backup solutions just didn't keep up with the RPO and RTO requirements that they have in their environment. And Cloudar is also a very interesting story, because that's a managed service provider that we worked with. Remember earlier when I mentioned about the multi-tenancy feature? So Cloudar offers the cloud backup solution to their customers, and it just makes the management a breeze, because as I mentioned, they can create fences between their customers. Their customers aren't even aware of the fact that the same solution is being used by several different customers, and they don't have insight into what other people are storing using that solution. So they're almost using our solution as a self-service portal. It's extremely easy for them to manage that entire overhead. Well, this is a list or an incomplete list of some of our customers and partners. You're going to see makers of sugar water on here, space exploration, makers of guided missile systems and nuclear subs, vacuum, higher learning, life insurance. Really every vertical is represented here. And all of these companies really trust our solution to make their data available at the drop of a hat.
Okay, great. So this is where we really try not to brag too much, but we always want to point out that our customers really, this is those 5-star reviews on the marketplace is really what hits home for us and what is really the most important to us. So you can check out those reviews, read them from customers. They point out all the different features that they're successfully utilizing. Also, N2WS has been recognized within the industry via the many awards that have been coming in, and we actually just got another award yesterday that we'll add to this slide. And it's really a testament to our ability to provide great tools for security and backup, and it really is a lifesaver to our many customers. So they often say that it's a fit and forget solution, and just provides the security they need and so they can sleep well at night. Great. So now we have finally come to Q&A time. Before, we have a few questions that came in which we'll address. But just a few points. Again, we've mentioned the trial before. That link is there if you are not a customer. Once again, we do have those upgrade instructions. And again, you can upgrade using the patch or upgrade the server instance as well. Okay, so great. So Sebastian, I'm going to throw this one to you. So this is what we touched on a bit, but let's kind of talk about it a bit more, because we did have S3 archiving in our previous release. And as you said, that was calculated to be around a 40% cost savings, and we bumped that up to 60%. So can you maybe talk a bit about that and how we calculated that? What did we actually provide that is in this release?
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. So N2WS Backup and Recovery, one of the things about our solution is that it's an extremely lean solution. So, for example, if you install the trial, you'll find that usually it's only a T2 small instance. By the way, we also support the T3 instances now. So that's an extremely lean product, and it doesn't have a lot of horsepower. It doesn't require it because we facilitate the backups. Now, when you perform the archiving into S3, there is some work that needs to be done to actually perform that archiving of the data, because we take a snapshot and then we take that information and store it in S3. So there was some optimization about that process so that you're not, once again, just using resources, horsepower, and pay for it for a long amount of time. After the fact, after we were done compressing this data and deduping this data even further. So that's where some performance enhancements were made, how we perform the archiving of the information into S3 and really make it as cost-effective as possible. And as I mentioned, there were some improvements on the compression and the deduping of that information as well. So we provide an archiving as fast and as efficient as possible now with that new version.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so another question. This is regarding our resource control feature. So someone is asking, can I just use scripts for that? So maybe you can, Sebastian, you could talk about maybe the reasons, most people, they can manage those Lambda scripts, but there are a number of disadvantages to that. So maybe we can talk about that a bit, Sebastian.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to lie. You're absolutely right. You could create a Lambda script, but the word here, the key word is it's a script. Scripts don't scale very well. So when you're introducing new resources into an environment, and as I said earlier, you know exactly how it is. Somebody spins up an instance, and then you don't want to miss out on that instance, but scripts don't scale. They don't automatically find instances. And that's where N2WS Backup and Recovery is different, because we introduce the same ease of use that we're already using to create backups and to scan for more resources using the tagging system. That same system is now in place for the resource control as well, which means if you're spinning up a new instance, you can immediately make sure that not only does that instance, that information, that resource get backed up, but also that it is turned off according to the schedules or multiple schedules that you're creating. So when you're spinning up a new development instance, you can make absolutely sure that that instance will not be running after hours. So that's the huge improvement compared to scripts, which aren't really an enterprise class solution. If you just have a few instances and you're never ever making any changes, which of course you're not doing because this is a fast moving environment, especially in the cloud. This is where you can stay on top of the, resource control, though no pun intended.
Great. Okay, so someone is asking, I can take this one. Someone is asking if I'm on the standard version, how do I get access to resource control? So the good news is you do, actually. All you have to do is upgrade your existing server instance, and you have access immediately. The other features you may not have access to if you're on standard. So that would be archiving to S3. Among a few others. So what we would recommend is that even if it's just for a month or two, that you try that out. Maybe try out maybe an advanced version, because there is that really major cost savings component. So you can see, and that cost savings would essentially offset that upgrade cost increase. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, so this is about also in resource control and how it works on EC2, but this person is looking to explore that further across other workloads outside of EC2. So Sebastian, can you talk about that? Because I know we do expand outside of EC2.
That's correct, right. So when you're thinking about cost savings, don't just think about the EC2 instances, which of course is the first thing that everybody thinks about, but RDS databases are extremely expensive to run. And when you have RDS resources, whichever flavor you're using, if it's Oracle, if it's SQL, it doesn't matter. So when you're running RDS instances that don't need to be running all the time, that's something that the resource control can already take care of as well. It's kind of sort of a hidden feature, but yeah, when you take a look at the user guide, which of course is also included with our product, you'll find that you can easily save a lot of money, because even the smallest instance type for RDS is about $18 to $20 a month. It's just one single instance, and as I said, that's the smallest type you can even spin up. So if you don't want this to be running 24 hours a day, that's something that the resource control can already take care of. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but absolutely, of course, I already mentioned that we're always working on improving the product. So there's going to be a few more polishes in our immediate future as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll add, too, that we're always working on the product, and we're also always really wanting to hear what our customers, our prospects, what their needs are, because those requests go literally directly to our dev department. That's extremely valuable information for us, for the development team, so they know what the priority is for our users and what they can work on. So definitely really don't hesitate to shoot us any feature requests. So we're always looking forward to hearing about those. Okay, so that's we've kind of we're almost up. I just want a few closing remarks. So again, this was just a really high-level overview, and Sebastian's demo just touched on our resource control feature. But please feel free to reach out to us for a more in-depth review of N2WS. So your account manager can assist with this. They can help you with a white glove launch or an upgrade. Also, our support team is available 24/7 around the globe. They will respond typically within the hour. And lastly, please check out our website. There's a lot of information there, how-tos, other webinars. We have more webinars coming, so check out our events page. We're going to be at summits everywhere. If there's an AWS summit, we are there. So please stop, say hello. Sebastian and I will be at some of them. And, you know, that's it. We'll wrap up. I want to really thank you, Sebastian, for lending us your expertise. I really hope everyone learned a lot from this session. Sebastian, you want to give a quick goodbye?
Absolutely, yeah. I just want to reiterate what you already mentioned. We're going to be at every single summit this year. So if you happen to be at a summit, please come to our booth and say hi. We always love hearing from our prospective customers.
We do, for sure. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.